Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, another day, another Democrat avoiding accountability. This time we'll talk about it. It's Don Lemon, plus an interesting weekend forecast for severe weather as it relates to winter storms across the state of North Carolina. Details on all of that coming up. And a good Friday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app. Just search for the Nick Craig Show or visit the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group in Wilmington. For any legal challenges you might be dealing with, reach out to them, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. And of course, we'll take a look at the forecast, things trending in the right direction for southeastern North Carolina as it relates to winter weather this weekend. We'll jump into that towards the end of our program this morning. Accountability. That is a big word that we use on the political right because we feel that many individuals are not held to account for the things that they do. We see this all the time. We'll get into the most recent example of this, which includes Don Lemon, the former disgraced CNN host. We'll get into that here shortly. But it's not just with people like Don Lemon who are celebrities on the left. These individuals that are and have been part of the establishment media cabal. It's all over the place. But look at some of the recent examples of violence that we've seen here throughout the state of North Carolina. Back in the summer of last year, late August, Irina Zarutska, 22-year-old woman from Ukraine, attempting to escape her war-torn country, moving to the United States, following a legal process, being a useful, productive member of society, comes home from her job, jumps on the Charlotte light rail, leaving her job at a pizza shop in Charlotte to be brutally assaulted and murdered on a train. Why did that situation unfold in the way in which it did? Because there was no accountability for the killer in that case, DeCarlos Brown Jr., the multiple-time convicted criminal with severe mental issues that was roaming the streets of Charlotte. Most recently, another stabbing on the Charlotte light rail. This happening in early December with a Venezuelan illegal immigrant who had already been banned from riding on the light rail system in Charlotte. That individual decided it was in his best interest to be intoxicated, which is why he was banned from the light rail in the first place, and decided it was his prerogative to get into a fight with somebody and stab them in the chest during a ride on the light rail system. We have seen a huge uptick in recent years, not only in North Carolina, but around the rest of the country, of individuals escaping responsibilities for their actions. This is a growing trend. I will contend to you today that it is a dangerous trend that we are continuing to see, and it needs to be brought in line. It needs to be dealt with. Society, and some of you might roll your eyes at this and think I'm being extreme, but I'm not. Society will not exist without accountability. The fabric of our society, as you and I understand it right now, ceases to exist when you start wiping away accountability, when you stop holding people responsible for the things that they do. That doesn't mean that people don't deserve or shouldn't have the opportunity to get a second chance. That shouldn't mean that we just rain down fury on on individuals who make mistakes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about basic accountability. And we unfortunately have another example of that today, a situation that has unfolded over the last week or so in which a very prominent Democrat is completely escaping responsibility. The story today is that a federal magistrate judge in Minnesota on Thursday rejected an attempt by the United States Justice Department, the DOJ, to charge former CNN host Don Lemon over his participation in an invasion last Sunday of a St. Paul church service that happened by anti-ICE agitators. You've seen a lot of coverage of that throughout the week. You had a group of, surprise, surprise, left-wing agitators, left-wing activists storming their way into a church service last Sunday in Minneapolis because they're frustrated with the federal government. Now, before we get into any more of that, let that sink in and set for a second. These individuals in Minnesota have a higher appreciation for those that have come into the country illegally than U.S. citizens. They believe that the laws do not apply to them or the people that they are supportive of, and so they're upset at the federal government, right? I mean, that's where this is all coming from. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, it's a federal entity. It's a federal agency. So their frustration, as you've heard, is at the Trump administration. Really, it should be at Congress for passing and allowing immigration law to exist. I mean, if you really want to point the finger at who is responsible for the laws that are on the books, it's Congress. That's who does this. Yes, the president signs off on it, but it requires multiple steps before it gets to the president's office. So they should be upset at Congress in general. But nevertheless, it's Orange Man bad once again. So you had Don Lemon, or Don Lemon. That makes him sound a little bit classier, like he's a straight newsman, right? Don Lemon. It's a guy you'd trust and guy you'd listen to. Don Lemon, who's 59 years old, was part of a group of dozens of demonstrators who disrupted Sunday's worship at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota last weekend, or just a little under 1 week ago. This group of individuals decided, because again, their frustration at the federal government exists, that they should take it out on individuals who are minding their own business and attempting to express their faith and express their religion. You've probably seen a little bit of this, but this is just to show you exactly what Lemon was engaged in. You can hear in this clip a kind of a lot of background noise. This is a group of these left-wing anti-ICE, anti-American agitators in the background yelling and chanting. So that's what you're hearing as Don Lemon, the former CNN host, attempts to interview, I believe this is the pastor of the church in Minneapolis, so in St. Paul, I should say. Take a listen to this.
These people have come into our house and they've interrupted our worship. This is a house of peace, and we try to proclaim that. And this stirs division and rancor. And in the end, it's not helpful. Ultimately, I believe they've lost. They've emptied a house of worship. Everybody's gone home. Their point has been proven worthless. And so, in the end, I think they lose. But more importantly, if I was to break into any of their houses uninvited, cause derision and upset according to their values, I would be kicked out ultimately. It's not a good way.
Now, I'm going to pause this clip, and again, sorry for the quality of the audio. You've got these left-wing lunatics screaming in the background. But, this has gotten some pretty decent media coverage, at least in the earlier parts of this week. But I have to make this point. I have to play this out. If a group of Trump-loving individuals stormed a church anywhere across the United States, as we saw take place in St. Paul last weekend, if a group of Trump-loving conservative MAGA folk did this exact same thing, it would have been the 24-hour news cycle this entire week. There would not have been a single other news story that you would have heard about. You wouldn't have heard about the president in Davos. You wouldn't have heard about anything that has gone on this week. That would have been the lead story the entire week. You would have panelists on CNN, on MSNBC, the opinion editorial board at the Washington Post, all of these highfalutin journalists at the New York Times and everywhere else writing about how, yet again, Donald Trump is encouraging insurrection, how the Republican Party is out of control, how the Republican Party needs to be taken down a couple of notches. What they did was completely unacceptable. Every single person involved needs to be thrown in prison. They need to serve 50-year-to-life terms for the horrific acts that they've played out. You know that I'm right when I say that. You know that that's exactly how the portrayal of this event would go down if, in fact, the shoe is on the other foot. Now, that is unfortunately the case with the vast majority of news and situations that we cover and that many of those on the right cover. And it all, again, rolls down to exactly what I opened the show with: accountability. The left does not believe in accountability. They do not believe that they should be held responsible for the things that they do. They don't believe that there should be consequences for their actions. And for a magistrate judge in Minnesota, that individual believes that Don Lemon, even regardless of the evidence, should not be held to account for leading on a group of individuals that stormed a church last Sunday. And I will contend to you that that is a major problem. It just is. I don't care how you slice it, how you dice it. It is a major problem when individuals believe that they can act in this manner and not have to deal with any consequences. So you've got this federal magistrate judge in Minnesota that is ignoring and rejecting, is the more accurate word to use, the attempt by the Justice Department to charge Don Lemon. Now, fortunately, a couple of other individuals have been charged, so some good news there. But Don Lemon, who is seen in this video, you can hear him in this video talking to an individual of this church saying, yeah, this is, if the shoe was on the other foot, if I stormed into these people's home, we'd have a major problem. So here's more of this hard-hitting interview with the great Don Lemon, formerly of CNN.
I feel violated. I feel interrupted. I feel angry.
May I ask you something? When you were saying if you had showed up at their house, they're saying that people are showing up at houses where they're citizens or without due process and breaking and entering the house. One that we saw, I've been watching from New York, with a battering ram into someone's private property, and there's no recourse. There's no, you understand what I'm saying?
This is all part of a much larger dialogue, in my opinion. On one side are people who watched a previous administration bring 12 million people in over the course of 4 years, and many of them undocumented, many of them criminals, etc. This is another administration's corrective. Now, whether you agree with the policies or procedures, I think I could actually be sympathetic to some of the things where there have been.
I mean, it's just the whole situation is insane. The whole thing is completely out of control. And so you've got the justification for this. It is now okay, according to Don Lemon and those on the political left, that we're now, I guess, just going to start storming churches. I mean, that's what he's saying. And his justification is, well, these individuals are frustrated that the federal government is conducting operations against illegal immigrants. Therefore, they are justified in storming a church. They are justified in literally committing insurrection, right? The left loves using this term. It's one of their favorite words in the entire dictionary. They've consistently used this now on and on and on and on. But they're justified when they storm a church, kick all the parishioners out, and ruin the church service. And the justification is, again, well, ICE is conducting federal operations. How do those two things align at all? Where is the crossover between the federal government enforcing federal law and you as a left-wing agitator stopping a church service and breaking it up? Where is the correlation? I'm failing to look at these two situations and see where there is any overlap whatsoever. And the reason I'm failing to see it is because, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. The two things could not be any more disconnected. But you've got now people like Don Lemon. You've got these other individuals within the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul, the state of Minnesota, that believe that all of this stuff is justified, that they can do whatever they want and they're never going to be held to account. And I guess they're right, because a federal magistrate judge is refusing the charges that are being brought by the DOJ. So I guess when the rubber meets the road, they are justified in doing, and they should be allowed to continue because nobody's going to hold them accountable. More from this hard-hitting interview with Don Lemon.
Many of them, most of the people that they detain don't have criminal convictions or criminal records.
I'm not going to get into the weeds.
But you should know that, though. Don't you think that's part of it?
Yes, and I could also show you many opposing sides where we're also picking up the very criminals that have put Americans in danger. And I'm not saying it's pretty. I'm not saying it's not messy. I'm not saying it couldn't be better. I'm saying this is a part of a much larger dialogue in which one administration caused a great deal of chaos and havoc and danger for American citizens, and another is trying to correct that.
Do you believe that? Why honestly,
Okay.
Let me talk to you just on the
You're not
facts.
a journalist.
Yes, I am. I want to give you the facts.
No.
Did you hear what this guy has said at the church? You're not a journalist. Yeah, that's an accurate statement. Don Lemon used to be a journalist. He tried his damnedest to become a highfalutin journalist, and he was kicked to the curb at CNN because he's not. The audiences didn't like him. If you go back and read some commentary from people that worked with him anonymously, they said he was a complete and total arrogant jerk, that he was a pompous jerk, and nobody wanted to deal with him. Nobody liked working with him. And so bravo to this individual who says, you're not a journalist. And Don goes, oh, no, hold on a second. Yes, I am. Let me continue walking with you. I've got more questions. I am a journalist. How dare you? I am a journalist. I am a journalist.
Undocumented people and immigrants commit far less crime than American citizens?
We're done here.
Than natural-born Americans? You won't listen.
If you could ask,
I'm giving you the facts. It is.
Give me facts. I would have a conversation.
But I can respond to you.
Did Jesus stand with the oppressed?
Because he doesn't want to listen to facts. That's the interesting thing about this, is that they won't listen to facts.
No.
You won't, because
when you pose as a journalist.
I am a journalist. Journalist gives facts.
Can you believe this? This is a guy. I'm sorry to get so off track on this. This is a guy, Don Lemon, who at one point in time was a very influential person in American media. Well, I'm not going to I can't sit here and take that away from him. He was. He had, at a point in time, had a very popular show on CNN. He was one of the more watched, not most watched. I'm being careful with the words that I'm using. He was one of the more watched individuals on CNN. There were people that watched his show, and yes, he did have some pretty high level of influence. He has gone from that to a period of time now where he is arguing with somebody in front of a church in Minnesota about whether he is or is not, in fact, a journalist. Oh, how the mighty have fallen for old Don Lemon. I am a journalist. Hold on a second. Journalists ask question. I am a journalist. Completely freaking out over this.
Then you start correcting me with facts and don't have.
You shouldn't hear the facts?
Of course, I should hear the facts.
Most of the people who are picked up
will you give me the
have
facts on both sides?
That is the facts on both sides. Most of the people who are picked up and are detained are not convicted. They have no criminal convictions. They have no criminal records. None. That immigrants commit far less crime than native-born Americans. So they won't listen to the facts.
They won't listen to the facts. So this is the fact that those on the political left want you to believe. They will argue, and we'll hear another clip from Don Lemon a couple of months ago here in a few minutes. They want to argue that because people who came into the country illegally have not been convicted of said crime yet, even though it is in fact illegal. I know this is a hard pill for many to swallow. It is in fact illegal to come into the United States illegally. That should be common sense, but it's not. It is in fact illegal to come into the United States illegally. But because those individuals haven't been charged with that yet, because there is no criminal conviction yet, you will hear this argument from people like Don Lemon and those on the left that these people haven't been charged with a crime. Yeah, No, duh, they haven't been charged with a crime. That's why ICE is conducting the operations that they are, because these individuals have been flying under the radar. They have been flying under the law. They will receive charges. They could potentially receive a conviction. They just have not yet. That is why the federal government is continuing to conduct these operations. The mental gymnastics that you have to jump through in your head to try and convince yourself that individuals who have broken into and come into the United States illegally are somehow justified in those actions and not criminals is absolutely insane. This argument that we consistently hear that somehow it is no longer a crime to illegally enter into the United States is nuts. And don't take my word for it. Here is Don Lemon on another on-the-street interview. This is the hard-hitting journalism that he wants to claim that he is. This is him in October arguing with a woman on the streets of Chicago over illegal immigration. He makes the exact same points. This is back in October of last year. Don't take my word for it. Listen to Don's.
Okay, crossing the border illegally is not a crime?
No, it's not a criminal act.
Okay.
It's a misdemeanor.
So why?
It's not a crime. Crossing the border illegally isn't a crime. What kind of reality are you living in? What kind of fairy tale world are you living in? Don, it is absolutely a crime to cross the border without going through a legal port of entry. This is where we're at in our society. We are now having a discussion publicly over whether it is or is not a crime to ignore federal immigration law, ignore ports of entry, and just cross over the Rio Grande into Texas. Whether it's illegal or not to ignore ports of entry and cross into portions of Arizona with no screening, with no proper documentation, with no visa, with no passport. That is the argument that we're having right now, apparently.
Okay, crossing the border illegally is not a crime?
No, it's not a criminal act. It's a
Okay.
misdemeanor.
So why are they being sent back and saying that they're breaking the law?
That's the point.
Okay, as somebody that actually...
We don't know if they're breaking the law because they won't tell. There's no due process. Where's the evidence? That's the whole point. And if they are breaking the law, most people will say, okay, then they need to go if they're criminals. But if they're not, why are they being rounded up and sent out? Especially when he promised to deport the criminals. And now he's not doing that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going...
Misdemeanor is not a crime. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So misdemeanor is not
It's
a
not
crime?
a criminal act. No, if you get charged with a misdemeanor, that's not a criminal
why
act.
get charged at all then?
A misdemeanor. Folks, I'm not a lawyer. Well, we have great legal professionals that are friends of the show, Melissa Gott and the legal team over at the Law Group. He is saying that a misdemeanor is not, in fact, a crime. I'm not an attorney. I am not going to sit here and pretend to be an attorney. But I feel very confident in my commentary, in my stance, that in fact, a misdemeanor is in fact a crime. Misdemeanors can be serious things. Yes, of course, felonies typically are a little bit higher, but a misdemeanor is still a crime. Reading directly from North Carolina statute, misdemeanors are minor criminal offenses that are subject to legal penalties and consequences, although they are typically less severe than felonies. Yes. But Don Lemon, in this interview from October, arguing with this lady on the streets of Chicago, is arguing that a misdemeanor is not a crime. Maybe he means to say a misdemeanor is not a felony, but that's not what he's saying, and he doubles and triples down on this. That a misdemeanor, crossing the border illegally, is in fact not a crime.
To deport the criminals, and now he's not doing that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going...
Misdemeanor is not a crime. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So misdemeanor is not
It's
a
not
crime?
a criminal act. No, if you get charged with a misdemeanor, that's not a criminal
why get
act.
charged at all then, if it's not a criminal act?
Because we have different levels of crime. Everything is not the same.
So it is crime.
No,
It's just
we have
different levels.
different levels of. I shouldn't say crime, but it's not. It's not a crime. You're not breaking the law. I mean, you are breaking the law, but it's not a criminal act.
So it's breaking the law.
No.
Can you listen to this logic? Does this make any sense to you whatsoever? It's not a crime, but it is breaking the law. Again, not an attorney. But if you are in fact breaking the law, you are in fact committing a crime. Jaywalking, for example, is a crime. Now, you're not typically prosecuted for it, but in many jurisdictions, it is a crime. Speeding, something that many of us probably have done a time or two in our lives, is in fact a crime. There are penalties associated with speeding if you are seen and observed speeding by law enforcement. His argument is beyond the pale of logic. I can't even begin to understand the argument that he's trying to make. I think I understand what it is. But he is arguing with this woman on the street in Chicago that crimes are not crimes, misdemeanors are not crimes, breaking the law is not a crime. If breaking the law is not a crime, then I guess crimes don't exist. Because none of this makes any logical sense whatsoever. But he continues, he doubles down, and there's some, I guess, producer or somebody off screen arguing with this woman because Don can't even put together a salient point. Listen to this. It's insane.
No, you're not breaking the law.
The misdemeanor is not breaking the law.
No.
If you're speeding, drinking, get pulled over, DUI.
That's not a criminal. Well, no, if you're speeding is a misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor.
Right.
So is it a
It's still
crime?
breaking the law.
Okay, well, if you want to
He goes, okay. Yes, Don, that's the whole point. It's still a crime. What are you talking about?
But that would do is semantics. But what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to tell you is everything is not the same. It's all not one thing.
But is it the law?
What is it? The law that what?
Is it a law to come
Is
over
there a
legally?
law?
Is there a law?
There are rules that processes that you should follow. Yeah.
Now, hold on a second here. No. It's not a rule, Don. Rules can be broken. Laws cannot. There is a big difference between rules and laws. Huge, huge difference. He knows what he's doing here. Well, there's rules. No. There's laws. There is federal laws, general statute, as it relates to coming into the United States. It is a law. It is enshrined by Congress. It was signed into law by a president of the United States. It's not a rule, Don. Rule is I don't eat after 9 p.m. That's my rule. It's not a law. If I have a piece of chocolate at 10 p.m., the police aren't going to show up to my house with a battering ram and blow the door down. It's a rule, not a law, Don. Very different things.
You're breaking rules. You're breaking the rules, but you're not necessarily breaking a law.
So what happens when you break the rules?
Then you suffer the consequences. But the consequences should not. Look, no one is saying no one should suffer the consequences. You guys are getting things mixed up.
So there you go. So now you're the idiot. I'm the idiot now. Folks, you know what? My whole opinion has been changed. Don Lemon is right. We're just getting this whole thing confused. We're just too stupid to figure this out ourselves. Thank God we've got somebody with the journalistic integrity and the logic of Don Lemon to walk us through this argument. The pushback, he can't even answer. No, it's just a rule to come into no. Sorry, Don, it's not. It's a law. You don't like the law, that's fine. Start petitioning Congress to change it. Go to Washington, D.C., probably not this weekend due to winter weather. But go to Washington, D.C. and start actively advocating for changing federal immigration law. If you don't, again, you don't have to like every law. There's plenty of laws I think are stupid. Now, I can choose not to follow them. I put myself at probably pretty high risk depending on what the law is. But if I don't like it, I should lobby my congressmen, my congresswomen, my senators to change said laws that I disagree with. I don't just get to ignore them because I don't like them. I don't just get to choose not to follow them because I disagree with them or I think they're mean. Right? It's a big term on the left. Oh, it's mean. Doesn't matter if it's mean. It's the law. If you choose to break it, there should be severe consequences for doing so. But the left just cannot beat that through their brain. They are holier than thou. They are the ones that are on the moral high ground with all of this. Everybody else should just bow down to whatever nonsensical argument they want to make. This minute and 40-second clip that you just listened to is one of the most illogical arguments I have ever heard. And believe you me, I spend a lot of time listening to people argue and have various discussions about things. This is close to the top of the list as one of the most illogical that I've ever heard. Nothing about it whatsoever has any level of consistency. But don't forget, as we heard earlier, Don is a journalist. And how dare you argue and claim that he is not? You may ask yourself, why did this jackass get fired from CNN? Can't possibly imagine why. Speaking of the law, pretty on-brand topic this morning. If any legal challenges arise, if you actually break the law and you are dealing with some consequences, you need to make sure you put your trust in the Law Group in Wilmington. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you need a strong criminal defense because you broke the law, if so, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. The Law Group is located in downtown Wilmington. Melissa Gott and her team live here in our community, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or again, their website, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa Gott and her team for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. Well, where do we go from here? I guess we'll have some more from Don Lemon and all of his great insight. Plus, we'll take a look at the weekend forecast. Things looking better here for southeastern North Carolina. We'll get to all of that coming up as the Nick Craig Show rolls on a Friday morning, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show, a very insightful Friday edition of the program. Laws are not laws. Crimes are not crimes. They are not the same. A misdemeanor is not a crime. Rules and laws are essentially the same. Whether you break a rule or a law, you shouldn't be held accountable. A lot of very highfalutin information we are bringing to you today. You can get access to our daily show notes and support the show by visiting patreon.com/Nick Craig if you want to view some some of these clips yourself each and every weekday, providing those all of the research, all of the articles, all the clips, patreon.com/Nick Craig. So we're talking about accountability, right? That's really what a lot of this boils down to. And to this administration's credit, Pam Bondi and Republicans in general have received some pretty significant flack, and rightfully so, in recent months over what is perceived to be a lack of accountability. And this administration, and I think a lot of Republicans, are sick and tired of it. We are sick and tired of playing a game by one set of rules and then watching the other side play by a completely different set. It doesn't work. I've used the sports analogy a million times. Right? We're in the playoffs of the football season right now. Super Bowl just a couple of weeks away. Both teams play by the same rules. 10 yards is a first down. You get 4 downs to get that. If you don't, you turn the ball over. If one team said, no, actually 5 yards is a first down, that would completely destroy the game. It wouldn't work. You would no longer have the football league. It wouldn't exist. You wouldn't have that anymore, right? But I guess for those on the political left, they just want to work themselves into this situation where everything is different for them. Another example we saw this week, Bill and Hillary Clinton were asked to come testify in front of an oversight committee hearing. They skipped it. They said, no, we're not showing up. And fortunately, the House Judiciary Committee in just the last couple of days is now attempting to hold them accountable, holding them in contempt of court, as they should be. And you've already seen the reaction from that. Oh, this is the weaponization of the federal government. This is politics, and this is disgusting. I mean, you had people within the Trump administration serving time in prison for contempt of court. Steve Bannon and others, Peter Navarro and others. So if contempt of court, which is in fact a legitimate thing, if you are summoned to show up in front, or to contempt of Congress, I should say, if you're compelled to show up in front of an organization, if you receive a subpoena and you are asked to come testify and you choose not to, there are consequences for that. We've seen those consequences play out. The Democrats had no problem throwing Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro in jail. No problem with that at all. But Bill and Hillary Clinton, they shouldn't be held to the same standard. They shouldn't be held to the same level of responsibility. Why not? I mentioned at the beginning, society begins to collapse when accountability goes out the window. We see it with crime in many of these blue cities across the U.S. and even here in North Carolina. Blue cities, blue district attorneys, blue city councils and county commissions, they allow criminals to run rampant. They allow individuals to consistently break the law over and over and over and over again. The place becomes very unsafe. And then you look in the rearview mirror and you wonder, man, how did this happen? It's the same thing we've seen all the time. And it all rolls down to accountability. People need to be held accountable. And so for this federal magistrate judge in Minnesota to reject this attempt by the DOJ to charge Don Lemon is ridiculous. And it only bolsters the point in a legitimate conversation that has taken place over the last year or so that the judiciary has gotten out of control. These district court judges, we've seen them blocking or attempting to block everything that this administration is doing. You've got a judge out in Washington State to telling the federal government that they're not allowed to enforce immigration law. I mean, the whole situation has been completely absurd. But it continues because the judges aren't held to account. And in this case, a federal magistrate judge isn't either. A source familiar with the situation recently told the New York Post that Attorney General Pam Bondi was enraged by the judge's decision not to sign off on the charges against Don Lemon and that she was heading to Minnesota herself as soon as this weekend. Pam Bondi announced on Thursday that 2 prominent local activists had already been arrested over the disturbance. Both of them prominent members of the local Black Lives Matter chapters in Minneapolis, in and around the St. Paul area. The two are charged with conspiracy against rights is in an effort to intimidate someone in the free exercise of their rights as secured by the United States Constitution. Again, because they decided to disrupt a house of worship. Don Lemon initially tried to get out of facing the criminal conspiracy charges by claiming he was, quote, committing journalism while taking part in the disruption. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Harmeet Dillon told conservative podcaster Benny Johnson on Tuesday, quote, whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge, as she is referring to an 1871 law that bans interference with civic acts such as voting, serving on juries, or practicing religion. That's a pretty serious charge. It's a pretty serious allegation. But based on the video evidence, based on the audio evidence of which you just heard, it would very clearly appear that Don Lemon was interested in obstructing these individuals' rights to go and express their faith, go and express their religion. But the left, I guess, thinks that that's justifiable now. Again, you put the shoe on the other foot, you'd hear about it nonstop. It would have been the top story on CNN, MSNBC, above the fold on the New York Times, the Washington Post, and every other leftist rag that we have in this country for the entire week. This happened last Sunday. It would have been the top story Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, today, Saturday, Sunday. It would go on forever. And of course, it would be Trump's fault. It would be the Republicans' fault. We just, I guess, are living in two completely different universes at this point. Great comment coming in on the show. Don Lemon would say contempt of court is not a crime, except in the case of Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. Well, of course, right? Because as he so eloquently put it, not everything is the same. End quote. Makes a lot of sense to me. Yes, I actually, in fact, agree with Mr. Lemon. Not everything is, in fact, the same. Everything actually is very different. But laws, crimes, those are pretty bog standard. The codes, the general statute, that stuff, for the most part, doesn't change all that often. It most of the time requires some sort of legislative body or legislative approval to change crimes, to change general statute, to change what is illegal and what is not. So yes, in fact, everything is not the same. This is a growing trend on the left of individuals that feel like they should be allowed to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and should not be held responsible for any of their actions. And the interesting thing about all of it is the American people aren't in favor of this. The American people are not in favor of individuals storming a church because they're ticked off with the federal government over immigration and customs enforcement. If you ask Americans, regardless of whether they're religious or not, regardless of whether they have strong faith or not, if you ask them if it's appropriate for political organizations to protest inside of a church, I think you will find overwhelmingly that the answer to that question is no. We do not like that. We do not think it's appropriate. We do not support that. So I suspect that this is going to boil down to yet another situation in which those on the political left are once again on the wrong side of history. They are once again on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. We have seen it time and time and time again. And I strongly believe that it is the exact same situation and the exact same case here. Ask anybody. Is it okay to stop a church service? Is it okay to block individuals from expressing their religion in America? The answer unequivocally is going to be no. But I guess the left wants to try this one out. They've lost on all the other issues. Parents' rights, women's sports. They've lost on those issues. Those have been incredibly unpopular, huge losing issues for them. So I guess they'll re-rack the pool table and try with this one, I guess. I have no freaking idea. This stuff is completely illogical. So I guess we'll see what happens. We'll watch this situation play out. Pam Bondi apparently going to be in Minnesota. Could, I guess, happen as early as today. We'll see what she has to say, and hopefully these charges do get filed, because I do believe in accountability, regardless of political stance, regardless of whether you are a Democrat or a Republican or a liberal or a conservative. I believe that you should be held to account. If you break the law, if you trespass, you do whatever it is that you're accused of and you're actually doing it and you're found guilty of it, you should be held to account. Laws are laws, crimes are crimes. Sorry, Don, that's not how the system works. So we'll keep an eye on this throughout the weekend, and I'll bring it to you as soon as we get any additional coverage right here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, all eyes on the weather system that we are looking at into this weekend, as pretty much more than half of the country, more than 30 states from places in Nevada all the way up to Rhode Island are going to be dealing with a significant bout of winter weather this weekend. Fortunately, things continue to improve here across southeastern North Carolina. It would appear, and it is pretty likely now, that some warm air is going to get in behind this system, meaning that large portions of coastal Pender, Brunswick, and New Hanover counties are likely not going to see any, if at all, any winter weather precipitation. It looks like it's going to be all rain. This is the most recent forecast briefing out from the National Weather Service here in Wilmington. This was just published about 15 minutes ago, around 7:30 this morning. And looking at some of the charts here, they are expecting very minimal icing, anywhere between 1/100th and 1/10th of an inch, depending on the area in which you're in. You can see, I'll see if I can zoom in on this any further. You can see where Wilmington is. This is the expected forecast map here. Even in places out towards Columbus County, the Delco area, Nakina, and others, only looking at about 1/10th of an inch of ice. Still pretty significant, sure, but nothing like we were looking like earlier in the week. As you continue inland, you can see some areas, Laurinburg, Fayetteville, they're over 1/4 of an inch there. Wadesboro as well, some higher totals as we get inland. So things are looking significantly better. Even worst case scenario, we'd be looking at less than 1/4 inch of ice across southeastern North Carolina. Here are some of the timelines for events for this weekend. The possibility for some levels of hazardous travel will be in the overnight Saturday into early Sunday morning. A couple of things to note: the risk of freezing rain and ice, that timeline has been shortened down as well. The highest likelihood of that is Saturday night, overnight into early parts of Sunday. But again, those totals here immediately on the coast are set to be very, very low as it stands right now. However, it is going to be very cold as well. So again, here are some of the percentages coming out from the National Weather Service here in Wilmington. The possibility of accumulating a 1/10th of an inch of ice is only 20%. I mean, we're looking at relatively low odds, especially here across the Wilmington area. However, we are the fortunate ones here. The vast majority of the rest of the state is looking at a major ice event that is likely to cause significant travel issues, likely knock out power for millions upon millions. It could be tens of millions of people across all of the states that are going to be dealing with ice here in the southeast. Major snowfall totals in the northeast part of the United States. Some areas looking at totals 12, 16, 20 plus inches of snow. A major winter weather event expected. Fortunately, fingers crossed, things do look pretty good here, at least in the immediate coastal area of both North and South Carolina. I would absolutely encourage you to keep an eye on the forecast throughout the weekend. These things are, of course, dynamic. they can change. But as it stands right now, the risks that we were looking at earlier in the week of seeing maybe a quarter to a half inch of ice here in the immediate southeastern North Carolina is just not looking like it's going to come to fruition. That warm air is going to swoop in behind this system, and it's going to be in the middle and upper 30s when this thing rolls through. If the weather models play out as it appears they will right now, which means you're not going to have freezing rain or icing when temperatures are at 35, 36, 37 degrees, which is a real possibility. So keep an eye on that throughout the weekend. Saturday night, probably not a smart idea to be doing any traveling Saturday night. Overall, the weather is going to be kind of miserable this weekend, but that is what we're looking at. Miserable weather Saturday and Sunday, heavy rainfall across the region as well, major icing throughout the rest of North Carolina. We'll keep an eye on it throughout the weekend. If things do change dramatically, stay tuned to our YouTube and Rumble and some of our other channels. I'll hop on with a live stream or a video if necessary, but all things considered, looks like we're dodging a major bullet as it relates to winter weather. Many folks, even not that far, only an hour or so west of Wilmington, they are not going to be so lucky. So we'll watch and track that. We'll have a full breakdown of it coming up for you Monday morning right here on the Nick Craig Show. Well, that's going to do it for another busy news week. Thanks to Melissa Gott and her team over at the Law Group for their continued support. You can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. It's also available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. It's now also heard weeknights 9 to 10 p.m. on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM WBT. Have a safe weekend. We're back with you Monday morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.